welcome to week 5 of online learning. And I'm sure a lot of you kind of heard from your parents yesterday, but Governor DeWine made an announcement yesterday that schools would unfortunately be closed for the remainder of the year. So I wanted to touch base on that real fast, just as far as that pertains to social studies and as far as Fleet 6 is going to go. So with that being said, just a couple of reminders throughout the rest of this online learning experience. I know we're kind of getting better at it, but there's just a couple of things I want to make sure that you are not forgetting to do through all of your classes, especially in social studies. So for first off, you're going to want to check Google Classroom every day. That's a very important one. But you also want to check your Gmail every day. That's something that I think that some people are forgetting to do. There are sometimes that we email you directly. So if I need to get a hold of someone specifically, I can send you an email. So don't just check Google Classroom, check your email as well. And then the third thing you should check every day is Progress Book. These 3 things, if you check these every day, you should never fall behind. You should kind of know where you're at. I put a star next to Progress Book because we don't always put grades in Google Classroom. A lot of times we grade it outside of that and then put it directly into Progress Book. So if you ever have a question about your grade or you want to know exactly what you're doing and what you have missing and things like that, always check Progress Book because that's where we're going to always update everything on there. So if you have any questions about grades, Progress Book's the way. But if you check Classroom, Gmail, Progress Book every day, make that a routine, you're going to have a lot of success. Assignments and grades do all count and matter, especially now that we're moving on to all online for the rest of the year. You need to stay on top of everything so you don't fall behind. We are taking everything for a grade just as if we were in school. Google Meet is a great option. Please take advantage of that. I've had a lot of students that I've done Google Meets with, sometimes one-on-one, sometimes me with 3 other people, sometimes I've done a full class. So if you ever want to do a Google Meet, just reach out. I'm more than happy to do Google Meets, and we can see each other face-to-face a little bit more through a computer, obviously. And last little note about this before I get into geography of China, I miss you. I genuinely, seriously miss you a lot. It's been so weird just listening to the governor's updates every day and knowing that this was probably coming, and the fact that we won't get to close out school face-to-face like we always do. So it's going to be a weird year. It's going to be a year that we all remember. You will never forget 6th grade. But seriously, I miss you guys so much. We've got this. We can do this together. I did do a little survey at the end of your assignments this week. So fill that out for me so I can make sure that you have the best online learning experience that you can. But please reach out. Keep me updated. I miss you guys a lot. So now we're going to get into China a little bit. So this is our last civilization of the year. Think about that. We've already done Mesopotamia. We've done Egypt. We've done India. And now we're finally finishing off on ancient China. So before that, though, I want to kind of get a few little basic facts about China today so you can kind of get your brain wrapped around that. So in present-day China, 2019, 2020, pretty much same difference at this point. China is the 3rd largest country in size in the world. Russia and Canada are a little bit larger in size, but China's number 3. U.S. is very close to that as well. Roughly 3.7 square miles, 3.7 million square miles. So it's number 3 in area size, but in population, there's about 1.3 billion people. In the world, there's only about 7 billion people, so 1.3 billion of those people all live in China, which makes China easily the most populated country of any other country in the world. India is pretty close by, but those 2 countries are going to have the majority of our population, so it is the most populated country in the world today. Just to recap where China is located, I think you kind of knew that, but if you're looking at all of our continents here, China is part of Asia, and it's this big yellow blob right here. India is pretty close by right here. Mesopotamia was located right around here, and then we had Egypt right here. So most of our civilizations have taken place right in this area of the world. So we're going to be focused here on China in the yellow here over the next couple weeks here. So now we're moving into ancient China. Ancient China was smaller in size than China is today. So obviously China is a large area of land, but ancient China would have been smaller. And it's mostly going to be that green area of your map right here, which we're going to call inner China here in a little bit. So there's 2 main areas. There's inner China and there's outer China. Up there in the orange, you can see that is going to be outer China, kind of the outskirts of the political border of China. And then the green area right there, where most of the water is, that's going to be inner China. Those 2 didn't really merge into one country until the late 17th century, 1600-ish AD, so not that long ago. So most of ancient China, though, is going to take place in that green area right here. And there's going to be reasons why that's the case as we keep talking about that. So how do geography and climate affect us in general? In our life today, 2020, how do they affect us? So let's think about Port Clinton just for a second. So if you're looking at some of these features here that I put on here, some of these features we did on our geography wall back when we were in the classroom. So we've got bay, lake, plateau, creek, mountains, river, desert, ocean, valley, hills, plains, coastal plain. Coastal plain, don't be confused, it's just plains that are on the coast of water, right? So if you think about Port Clinton, we have a lot of these things even in our general area, and that affects kind of how our community is today. So if I were to do a quick circle, these are probably the ones that I would circle as major factors. I would say especially lake is going to be our most important factor that affects us on a daily basis, right? Our what we have in our water, our fish, our perch, our walleye, right? That affects restaurants, it affects people coming to our city for tourism, right? So all these different things can affect us. And then we have climate. So when you think about temperature in the summer, I would say we're kind of in that middle of hot and mild, but we're pretty hot in the summer, but not as hot as like Arizona, California, Florida, right? And the winter temperature, I would say we're on the colder side for sure, but we're kind of in that, probably closer to cold, but in that middle of mild and cold. And then precipitation, if you're thinking about things that fall from the sky, rain, snow, hail, we're kind of in the middle, right? We get a little bit of everything. We're Ohio. So we have kind of some great extremes in our climate. Some, in one part of the year it's hot, one part of the year it's cold. Even recently, like 2 days ago, it was like 60 degrees and sunny. And then today it was like 30 degrees and freezing. So we have some great extremes in Port Clinton. So that's actually kind of similar to how China is, except a little bit smaller scale because obviously Port Clinton, you can't really compare it too much to China. So with China, there's some huge extremes in their geography and their climate. China has pretty much everything. They have mountains, they have plateaus, they have water, they have a lot of different extremes, which kind of also determine that climate, right? If you're high in the mountains, you know it's going to be colder. And if you're really down low in a river valley, you're probably a little bit warmer, especially since they're not too far above the equator. So there's all the different features that you're going to see in China, as I kind of already mentioned here, with plateaus, mountains, deserts, rivers, seas, and I'll get into that in a second. And then huge temperature changes from one area of China to the next. So depending on where you're living, that can really make a difference on what your climate is. And obviously with ancient people, you're going to need a semi-warm climate, plus you're going to need to find water because we know that rivers are a huge part of our ancient civilizations. So a quick little map here. This is kind of our most important locations of China, as we usually label this map in class together. But just to kind of show you at a glance what our map would look like if we were labeling this together, and I'm going to kind of break it down by part. So when we get into inner and outer China, that's kind of how I'm going to separate these parts of China with that map I just showed you. So remember, the orange is going to be outer China, and that green is going to be inner China. So in outer China, I would say this is where people are not going to really settle in ancient times because that's not the best climate or features to live by. So in outer China, that's going to be the western side of China. So that's going to be this general area, and it's going to be the northern side of China. So on the western side, you're going to see two mountain ranges, and you're going to see a plateau. So that entire area is super raised up and elevated. And if you remember, the Himalaya mountains over here were right in the northeast part of India, right? So that Himalaya mountains is what separates China and India. So we know that this is super elevated. The Kunlun mountains are elevated, and then this plateau in the center, we know that that is raised up and flat, and they actually sometimes call that even the roof of the world, the plateau of Tibet, because it's so raised up and high above everything else. So this general area of China is going to be very elevated. It's going to be very cold, obviously, as you get higher up. And on the north, you're going to see actually a lot of deserts. There's two deserts, main deserts, the Taklamakan Desert and the Gobi Desert. Actually, they're very different deserts. The Gobi Desert's a pretty typical desert, what you would think. It's bigger, sandy, things like that. Taklamakan is more rocky and stony. They actually call that, like, what the word Taklamakan means once you go in, you will not come out. They think there's maybe armies buried underneath there. It's a pretty dangerous desert. So if you're looking here, high elevation and cold, desert, hot, once you go in, you never go out. These types of features are not going to be good for ancient people to live in. So outer China is not going to be where they settle. They're mostly going to settle in inner China, which is going to be this general area in the green here. If you notice, it's in the southeastern part of China, and that's going to be where a lot of the river valleys are going to be. We know in our civilizations that they settle by rivers. Mesopotamia settled by the Tigris and Euphrates. Egypt settled by the Nile. India settles by the Ganges and the Indus, right? So now in our rivers in China, we're going to have the Yellow and the Yangtze, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. So the flooding of the rivers and the silt that it produces is going to be why they're going to settle there. Plus, you can see some seas here on the side that are also going to be another source of water for the ancient Chinese people. So let's quickly talk about the two rivers. They both start with the Y, which is a little bit easier to understand and a little bit easier to remember. So the Yellow River, the Yellow River is kind of makes sense, right? Because if you look at the tint here, it actually kind of has a yellowish tint to it. That's because there's this limestone silt that kind of mixes in with the water. So the river actually kind of has a natural yellow tint to it. This river is a little bit less predictable. It floods a little more often. There are a lot of people and a lot of ancient people that settled near the Yellow River, but out of the two, this is probably actually the least popular river to settle by out of the two, even though there were still a lot of ancient people that would settle there, and there was a lot of good fertile land near it. The other river is the Yangtze River. The word Yangtze itself means long river because it's one of the longest rivers in the world, actually. And this one's going to be a little bit better on vegetation. It floods more predictably. We know that's a positive thing with ancient civilizations. So these are the two most important rivers in China that you'll need to remember. But the Yangtze is going to be probably the best river to settle by if you're an ancient person back in ancient China. So just a quick little recap. Inner China is going to be the red. Outer China is going to be the green. Whoa, stop there for a second. Mix that up. Inner China is actually going to be the green, and outer China is going to be the red. Whoa, made a mistake, but I'm already too far in the video, so don't sue me. All right, don't get confused by that. Outer China is going to be the red. Inner China is going to be the green. They're going to settle in Inner China because of the water. So don't get confused on that. My bad on that one. So if you're looking at this for like a map quiz, this is going to be the locations that you will need to know. We need the deserts up top. We have the mountains and the plateau on the western side here. We have the Yellow and the Yangtze River right here. And then we have three seas that kind of border the southeastern part of China here. We've got Yellow, the East China Sea, and the South China Sea. So that's my quick little spiel about the geography of China. So make sure you answer those questions. At this point, you should have already answered the questions. And then if you need anything from me, or if you're still confused about any geography related items, just send me an email. We can chat.